My name is Anke Sambeth and I'm a staff member at the Faculty of Psychology and Neuroscience. Up to a few years ago, I used to coordinate the first-year bachelor course called Learning and Memory at the Psychology faculty. And it was at that course that my colleagues and I wanted to introduce something new. So in the ideal world, in a PBL session, in the post-discussion, students discuss about the content that they've learned. They explain theories to each other and by that answer the learning goals they had to study. But in the real life setting, they often don't explain the learning goals to each other. They rather go to the book chapters or the articles that they had to read and explain that to each other. And the reason for that is that students not always want to intrinsically learn, but they simply want to pass the exam at the end of the course. And we feel this is not ideal, and that's why we decided to use what we call PBL-friendly exams. What we wanted is students to help designing the exam, so make exam questions on their own. So that would involve them in the thing that they feel is most important, passing the exam at the very end. And by involving them, the discussions that they had during the tutorial sessions would become better. So what we did is we asked the students to make or develop exam questions during the post-discussion that they had. After answering all the learning goals, we would ask them to think about it again, about the material that they had studied, and make exam questions. First, we would teach them what different type of exam questions exist, like asking for facts or understanding or even application. And then they would make the questions as a team during the session. And those questions that were correct, we collected them all, and those ones that were correct, we would put onto the student portal for them as formative tests during the study process. But some of the real good ones we would use in the actual exam at the end of the course. And in reality, this seems easy, but it didn't always go that well because students have to be motivated to do this, and not all groups are normally motivated in doing it, and they find it lame and they don't participate. But for those groups who did participate, the students really noticed that they could perform better on the exam, so they actually learned more than they were used to learn before. As a team, thought what is really nice about this procedure is that students are engaged in the learning process from a different point of view than they are used to, and by that they could elaborate more on the content that they have to learn, and in the end hopefully really learn more than they used to. One of the things that is difficult here is that you have to involve all the tutors as well. They have to participate in it too. And given that, at least in our course, we had many different students, so also many tutors, we really had to instruct the tutors, explain to them why it's valuable to do this exercise so that they wouldn't rush through the content at the very end. Using PBL-friendly exams is constructive because students elaborate on their learning by constantly making questions and testing them themselves on the knowledge they have already learned, so they know if they will pass the exam. And this constant activation of knowledge, this leads to deep encoding or deep learning. It is also collaborative because students collaborate with each other, first in small groups to develop questions, but later to share it with the entire group to receive feedback on whether they made a good question. It's also contextual because the students learn to link the academic content that they've just gained to real-life settings. So, for instance, they make questions about how you could treat a patient. And finally, it's also self-directed learning because by making the questions, the students learn to categorize which elements of the course are key and which are only secondary. And by learning to make this differentiation, the students in fact become better learners.